Welcome, everyone, to the Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Rich Mayfield, member 1211. I'm honored to be here tonight with Nic Watkins. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Nic, I understand that you're here to talk to us about your film, Bridging the Ice.
Yes, it's a film I've been working on for a long time. It's a family story about Greenland, adventure, and the first transatlantic air route.
So I heard a little bit that this primarily is about Gino Watkins.
Yes.
And who is Gino to you?
He's my great uncle. He's my grandfather's older brother.
So this is a family story, so it's personal to you.
It is
and,
indeed.
That kind of answers the question, like, how did you get into this?
I grew up with a painting of Gino in my father's office, and just seeing it from a young age. It's I should have had that painting, a picture of that painting here. It's an incredible painting of him next to a kayak in Greenland. And he was always just this kind of mysterious figure. And then as I got older, I got more interested in the history. And when I started making films, I always thought it would be a good idea to make one.
Did your family kind of tell stories about Gino, or was there just a picture up there?
Not until I got older.
Uh-huh.
But yes, I mean, he was a very big deal in the family. Family members had written books about him, and every so often we'd be invited to events in his name at the Royal Geographical Society. They have a little museum about him and things. So I sort of knew bits, but then it was only when I got to sort of, I think, 16 when I started reading all the books. There are 7 books written about his life. And I started reading them and actually found out how in-depth the story was and how dramatic his short life was.
Did he inspire you, like when you were a kid, to be an explorer and an adventurer, or?
No, actually, not really. Well, I mean, possibly. So his father, my great-grandfather, Colonel Watkins, was one of the first British people to move to Switzerland and sort of take up skiing as a hobby life. So he then taught Gino to ski, and that sort of went down the family. And so the only thing that was sort of left when it came to my father was extreme skiing. So my dad raced for the British ski team, and from a very young age, I was put into extreme situations, but almost entirely based around skiing.
I've got to know, are there any ski resorts on the island?
Yes, there's terrible ones in Scotland.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We're talking about like maybe 100-foot drop, and then...
There are some fairly dramatic mountains. The problem is it's almost entirely sleet.
Right.
It's kind of, from what my understanding, it's similar to what the East Coast is like. I've never skied the East Coast here.
East Coast has some good mountains.
Yeah, so the mountains are pretty decent, but I've heard that just the snow quality is quite bad. It's just very icy.
Yeah, it makes good skiers, though, right?
It does.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
So to be a skier growing up in the UK, you always had to just go to Switzerland? Is that the
Yes.
That the deal?
So my father worked between London and Geneva. So from 14, I would be taken to Switzerland every weekend to do ski training between school.
Every weekend?
Not every weekend, but many weekends over the winter.
That's pretty cool.
It's the same as going from here to Vegas. It's an hour and a half flight.
I guess so, yeah. You can also drive to Vegas. You got all your gear and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about how when you were a kid, you started reading these stories about Gino.
Yeah.
Right? So tell us kind of what you learned initially about like what the background of this is real quick, because I understand that the film is about everything he did, so don't give it all away, but kind of give us the rundown of what Gino was involved with.
Yes, so I won't tell you everything, because the film is almost entirely archival. So the film tells Gino's story. I'm not really in the film. But I was always interested in him. I knew he was a famous explorer for his time, but when I started reading the books, I found out about how significant the expedition was. They were trying to establish the first air route from Europe to North America, because obviously at the time, planes didn't have gas tanks that could go all the way. So it was Gino's idea that if you use stepping stones between Scotland, Iceland, Greenland, Newfoundland, and Canada, that you could fly to New York on a small engine plane.
And this is the route that small planes use today, right?
Yes, exactly. So all the planes follow the same route that he mapped out the first the first flight for in 1930.
So he just kind of went through and be like, well, we can do it if we do this, this, and this.
Exactly.
And then they had to set up fuel depots and stuff like that.
Yeah. So that was his idea. So he wanted to go to Greenland because everywhere else was known. They sort of knew the weather everywhere else, but no one had ever spent a winter on the ice sheet. And the planes would be going straight over the ice sheet. So they had no idea what the weather was going to be like on the ice sheet, what the winds were going to be like, and if it would even be possible to fly over there. So he wanted to see where it would be possible for planes to land, and then if it would be possible for the planes to go over the ice sheet to continue their journey to Newfoundland.
And so that's where you have a picture of the plane here.
Exactly. That's
but
the
also
plane.
he had a pretty significant kayaking
He
background,
did, yes.
right?
So that was sort of came about by accident. They didn't have a particularly large amount of money for the expedition, so they had intended to live off the land as much as possible. And Gino, when he arrived, they realized that they weren't particularly successful with fishing. Dynamite was what they found they were most successful with, but it would only get them a certain amount of fish. But they would watch the Inuit, who were fascinated by their arrival and hung around them a lot. And he saw them hunting in their kayaks, and he decided that if he was going to live off the land in Greenland, it would have to be by kayak hunting seals. So he sort of did it by necessity, and then he became the first non-Greenlander to master the kayak and to master hunting from it. And then eventually he took his kayak back to Europe and introduced kayaking to Europe.
Wow. That is pretty significant. So
It
this
is,
was all just so he could scout landing sites and everything across the way?
Exactly, yes. So the expedition was funded by Pan Am and the RGS and then private individuals.
So prior to that, no commercial air traffic was making it across?
No.
It was
There
all
no
just
flight.
ship-
The first flight happened by Charles Lindbergh after Gino's second expedition because of the route that Gino had established.
So you learned all this about your great uncle, when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
How do you get to the point where you're like, I'm going to decide to make a documentary about this man's life?
I got into sort of filmmaking accidentally. I knew that I wanted my life to be based around skiing, but I didn't really know how that was going to happen. I had studied media studies for my A-level, which is the equivalent of high school here. So I knew how to work a camera. And then I had planned to move to Switzerland. And then I spent the summer before moving to Switzerland in New Zealand because it was the first place that I could find skiing after my final exam. So I spent the summer down there skiing for 5 months, and then I met a bunch of pro skiers down there. I took my camera with me. I decided to make a little ski film just for fun, and then that got some traction when I came back to London between my 2 seasons, and then I got offered a job from a ski production company in Switzerland, and then they kind of offered me the job. Not really. I didn't really know how to work a camera very well, but it's easier to teach someone to work a camera than it is to teach someone to ski in the way that you need to be able to keep up with extreme skiers. You have to get to the same terrain that they do. You need to follow them over jumps. You need to climb up the same mountains that they do. So I was hired based on my skiing more than my camera work.
Are you doing this where they're skiing and you're skiing alongside with the camera?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not like fixed positions and...
We'll fix positions as well. When you're skiing big mountain, you essentially, if they're at the top of a face there, you need to climb up to the top of the face there because from the bottom, everything looks flat. You need to be at the same height that they are for something to look as steep as it actually is. So,
are you guys doing the drone stuff yet with the ski?
Well,
the
this was
FPV
it was 2005 to 2010. I was making ski movies.
So they're not really...
drones weren't around then.
Yeah.
I mean, we were sponsored by I was sponsored by GoPro when it was GoPro 1, and they were 140 pixels by something.
But they were the coolest, right?
They were the coolest, yeah. But
we've never seen this angle before. It's shaky and stuff like this.
It was awful.
Yeah. I mean, the GoPros have come a long way. It's interesting.
They're incredible now. Yeah.
So you kind of fell into filmmaking.
Yeah.
And then how'd you get to the point where you can make your own film about your family?
Well, I'd always planned, so when I started doing ski films, I'd always thought, oh, wow, it would be incredible to make a documentary about him because, as I said, there were 7 books, but there was no film whatsoever of him. So I thought it was a really nice idea, and then it sort of fell on the back burner, and then my father had kept in contact with other children of the explorers, and they unfortunately were sadly starting to pass away, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it now. And so I started filming all of the children of the main explorers, and then I got a job offer out here, and then the first few years I was distracted here, and then I finally found some time a couple of years ago to finish it. And
So like most projects.
exactly, yeah. So in total, it's probably been 8 years.
I've got a buddy that's been making a ski film for like 12 years at this point.
Oh, wow.
No, like 15 years, maybe longer.
I hope
He's
it's
got some
good.
old footage that he's trying to shoehorn into this movie.
Nice.
So on Saturday, if
Yeah.
everybody wants to come, we're doing a premiere, the U.S. premiere of this film, Bridging the Ice. So you can see that. But tonight we're here to talk about how you made this movie. But before we do you want to show that little clip that you
Yes,
brought in?
absolutely. That sounds great.
It was no desire for celebrity that drove Gino and my father to the Arctic, but a taste for danger. Father says they were hooked on it.
Gino Watkins was the golden boy of his generation, the hero explorer.
Ladies and gentlemen, the object of the British Arctic Air Route expedition was to investigate the possibilities of an air route between England and Canada across the Arctic.
아버지의 줄에 차가는지 뿌리냐 아버지의 갔다는지 왜 두아리 갔다나 아메리카 아버지의 갔다는 게 줄에 차가는 게 아버지의
Augustine Courtauld said, I will volunteer to be here on my own for several months.
Having run out of food and heating oil, he spent his last days on the ice cap, slowly freezing in total darkness.
You cannot expect to become all in Greenland.
So that's what you'll get to see on Saturday. It's a little teaser of what we have to
Exactly.
show you on Saturday.
Yeah.
So come for that. But why don't you tell us about your expedition to kind of retrace his steps?
Yes. So East Greenland is a difficult place to get to. Has anyone been to Greenland by any chance? Where about? Where? Tasselak.
Yeah, and I've been to Gino's base camp there.
Have you?
3 days.
Oh, amazing.
That's why I'm here.
Oh, thank you for coming.
So
Yeah.
Eastern Greenland, you come in from Iceland.
From Iceland,
Yeah.
exactly. There's no direct flight, so you go England, Iceland, East Greenland, and it's a very remote coast. The west coast is much more developed now. A lot of people fly into Nuuk. It's like a proper city, but the east coast of Greenland is still very remote. It was the most remote when Gino went there as well. And when you fly there, it's a dirt runway, small planes. It's
And is this, we have a weird projection up here, but is
Yeah.
that an accurate size of Greenland?
No, Greenland's very, very large. It's always sort of scaled down on maps because it's sort of rolling off into the distance. But Greenland's...
So if you move that down to the equator, like where would the top of Greenland and the bottom of Greenland be? Like just so we can get a sense of scale and how remote this is.
I mean, if you stretch Greenland down, it would probably go to Spain.
Yeah. It's pretty big.
Yeah, it's enormous. I mean, the ice sheet is 2 million square miles, so it's enormous.
Okay. So you guys flew in there, and it's still very remote. It's hard to get to.
It is, yeah. It's a small town. There's no proper roads, no cars. You sort of arrive on the plane, and you have to walk everywhere in town. This is what the town looks like now. It's a very small town of people who essentially all live off the land. They live very similar in the way to how they would have when Gino arrived. They're all either fishermen or seal hunters.
And that's still the primary diet is just fish and seal?
Well, unfortunately, they do get a lot of shipments of junk food from Denmark, and they love it.
What's the favorite like junk food from Denmark?
Well, just candy. Like I don't know what the Danish sodas are, but
Swedish
that's
fish?
all they
Danish
seem to be
fish?
possibly. But they're all just when you see them walk around town, they seem to be obsessed with sugar. Everyone's drinking sugary drinks and candy bars.
Yeah.
But then their diet is predominantly fish and seal.
That's like the main calorie source.
Exactly.
Any sort. I mean, aside from sugar, like carbs, they import like bread or wheat or.
I imagine they must do. The only supermarket in the town, which was also the post office and also the bank, was just one small room with beer, ammunition, candy and fuel. I don't remember seeing much bread or any carbohydrates.
So everybody's just living off the land unless they
Pretty much, yeah.
So walk us through like what you had to do to prep to get to all these sites that you wanted to see.
Well, so luckily, getting around by quad bikes and things is a lot easier now than it used to be. So just around the town, we had quad bikes to get around, and which was a little easier than when Gino was there. But it's still logistically a difficult place to go. But luckily, I had found a man called Benty Abelson, whose grandfather actually helped Gino on his expedition. So
that's pretty cool.
It's incredible, yeah. So he was our guide, and he sort of coordinated all of the travel for us. I told him all the key places that we wanted to go, and he'd been to all of them himself.
And how did you like arrange? Is this the family?
No, this is just a random family that I met on the dock who were fishing. But the people there were just so fantastic. They were so welcoming and friendly. There's very little English speaking still, so I couldn't really communicate with anyone. Danish is their second language, so they speak almost no English.
Huh. So how did you arrange travel? Like I know how you arranged it with your fixer, so to speak.
Yeah.
Same family.
Yeah.
It was super cool. But how did you get to these sites? Was it all overland?
So no, it was almost all by boat.
Okay.
So the first place we went to was the first base camp, Gino's first base camp, and that was 30 miles west of Amasilik. Amasilik is what it used to be called. And so Gino arrived. This is the same town where Gino arrived. It was the biggest town on the East Coast, and it was essentially the only place where people were living. And so,
what's the population of that town? You think how many?
It's hundreds.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was even smaller when Gino arrived. And so he went there and he asked them where the best place to go would be to have good access to the ice sheet and also be sheltered from the winds.
And why did he want access to the ice sheet?
Because they needed to be able to get up to the center of the ice sheet to test flying conditions over it. So they had been recommended an area 30 miles west of Amasilik, and so they sailed out there, and we essentially just followed his same route on a little speedboat, which was a lot faster than the Quest, which is what he used, which is the ship that Shackleton died on.
So then how do you get, so I imagine you're on the coast and you have to get up onto the ice sheet.
Yeah.
And this is just the easiest place to get up on?
Yes.
And then what is it like once obviously you went on the ice sheet, right?
Yes, absolutely we did. So at first we went to the base camp, which is...
And do we have some pictures of that?
We do, yes. It was tough to find. Luckily, they had a full-time photographer and cameraman on the expedition, which for 1930 was quite rare. So I had unlimited amounts of photos. So I was essentially I knew the rough area of the base camp, but I was like walking around with photos, like lining up mountains.
Yeah.
It took several hours to find the base camp. And then I eventually got there, and someone, maybe you, had laid out stones on the remainder of what was left of the base camp. This is a slightly different spot. But there were still a few remnants. There was their chimney. There was some very old smashed wine bottles.
I was going to say trash, right?
Trash, yeah. That's the base camp there, yeah.
Okay.
So that's their chimney in the foreground, which is one of the few things that remained. And then we spent the first couple of nights there just sort of appreciating the landscape that they lived in. They were there for 2 years. And then I actually met the person who stuck this plaque up. Because Gino was he's been called the godfather of kayaking, there's a lot of serious kayakers who make pilgrimages to this location. And one of them came to the British premiere, and he told me he saw that photo and he said, I put that up there.
That's cool.
Yeah, really
So
cool.
this base camp, they were in that base camp for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then it's just excursions up to the ice sheet.
Exactly. So they picked that location because it was what they thought was the best route up to the ice sheet. They would later learn that there was a very nice smooth transition for a few kilometers, and then they reached what they referred to as Buggery Bank. which that's because Scott, Gino's second in command, reached it and said, "Oh, bugger." When he saw it, it was a 30-degree solid ice piece that they had to navigate to get up onto the ice sheet, and obviously crampons in those days were not very efficient.
Not as good as the stuff we got these days.
Yeah, exactly. So they had to, the dogs couldn't grip going up there, so they had to haul everything by hand with block and tackle.
How far?
It was probably 300 meters.
Yeah,
so
enough to piss you off,
enough
right?
to piss you off, yeah. But then the ice sheet is very gradual. It's not really steep at all. Buggery Bank was the only really tricky part, and then the rest is just a slow incline all the way up to the center of the ice sheet.
So they were dog sledding up onto the ice.
They were dog sledding, yeah. Gino was also famously known for being very receptive to learning from the Inuit and using their techniques. A lot of British explorers sort of saw Inuit methods as sort of beneath them, whereas Gino was very keen to, he spent a lot of time living in the Inuit communities, working out how they navigated, how they fished, how they kayaked, and things like that. And so he decided to use dog sled, whereas previous teams had tried, horses and things like that, ridiculous stuff.
You would think that you'd be like, it's really harsh here, and these people are living here for their whole lives.
Exactly.
So maybe they got it figured out. I mean, I know they have it figured out, right?
Yeah, I think it was just probably this idea of like British exceptionalism, like, oh, we don't need their advice, we can just do it.
Sure. Nobody's ever said that before. So I think you had some pictures of some dogs on this. Did you take dogs on this trip?
No, we didn't. So there were dogs all over town. I mean, they still, the Inuit still live with dogs as a major part of their lives. Throughout winter, the whole coast is frozen solid. So dogs are the only way to get around. So the whole town is just seeming with dogs. And they all just run loose. They're fantastic just seeing huskies.
So they just run
everywhere.
loose, and then winter comes, and they're like, come on, guys, we need a ride. And
well, they all live outside throughout the year. It's crazy. I don't know how they do it in minus 40 C during the winter, but
and what are they eating? They're eating seal.
They're eating seal.
Just like everything
that's
else?
all they eat.
Again, a picture of that.
This is them feeding the seal.
So do the Inuit feed their dogs the seals? Like, is this a scrap or?
Yeah. So we just happened to come along, a hunter who'd brought home a seal. So they take out the best bits for themselves, and then the dogs get the rest.
Huh. So
and
it keeps the dogs around.
90% of their diet, dogs and humans.
Huh.
And then this is how they cool the seals. The ocean is cold enough that they just kill a few and just leave them in the ocean.
So are they hooked up on a line right there? So
they
don't
are
float
hooked
away?
up on a line. Yeah, I was. I asked, right, because I know that there are sharks in Greenland, but they don't come in that shallow. So apparently there's nothing that comes and eats them. So they just stay like that for weeks.
That's crazy.
And it's seal, just as I mean. Not as much now. Now it's basically just diet, but seal used to be their entire lives. All their clothes were made out of seal. All their tools were made out of seal. The teeth would make the pegs for their anoraks. The skin would be used for kayaks. The tendons would be used to tie up the kayaks. And then, all their clothing, almost everything came from seal. Because there's no trees on Greenland. So they don't have wood, so all their sort of tools have to be made from bone.
So all the houses we saw that are established in the 100-person town now, that's all imported timber?
Yes, exactly. I mean, so they do get, you'll see in the film when they're constructing kayaks, they do get pieces of wood, but wood is very precious because it's driftwood from the rest of the world. So when a piece of wood drifted up onto shore, that was very precious to them, and that would be used for kayaks and almost nothing else.
And then all the other building materials would be
shipped over from Denmark.
Yeah.
And then from the town we went to the first base camp,
right.
And we were traveling by boat, and then we spent a couple of days at the first base camp, and then we started our journey up onto the ice sheet. Unfortunately, Buggery Bank has disappeared now because of global warming. So we weren't able to do the same ascent that they were.
So is it easier now or harder?
It's easier, unfortunately.
It's easier?
I was hoping to, that's the route now. It's quite mellow.
But don't you feel like you would have just aced it.
Yeah,
like
I
being
mean,
an extreme skier with modern gear.
Yeah, exactly.
And like with
proper
cardio,
crampons.
like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and yeah, cardio. I mean, Gino's idea for training for the Arctic was he used to go to ballroom dances and then jog home. That was how he trained.
And
to go
smoke
to the
3
Arctic.
cigarettes or something.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they had terrible cardio, and I mean, yeah, crampons. I can't imagine what it would have been like doing it in. There's again photos in the film, but they were essentially wearing what old golf shoes look like. They just had little leather brogues with tiny spikes on them.
Yeah. Gear these days is fantastic.
It is, yes.
You know, the lightweight, everything's lightweight, everything's very warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Waterproof, most
Waterproof.
importantly.
Yeah. So is this up on the ice sheet or
yes, that was, so obviously we were there in the summer, so there's a lot of rivers coming down as the ice sheet is melting, so you had to wade across some rivers every now and then. But again, you know, with GPS and things, it's a pretty easy route to do. But
so you had the route planned out ahead of time?
We had the route planned out ahead of time, but just, you know, imagining doing this in leather brogues and canvas trousers.
Yeah.
Not knowing where you're going.
So is this embankment kind of like typical of a river? So this river just cuts through and there'll be what is that, like a 60-foot embankment or something like that?
Yes, exactly. So it's all very rolling around because it's eroded from the ice sheet as it's carved out these trenches over
So if you were to
years.
go upriver or downriver, would you find a spot where you could walk out, or are you scaling that?
At times we were having to scale it just to get a more direct route, but generally you can just find easy routes around.
And you had one planned?
We had one planned.
So
yeah, exactly.
what was your plan where were you going? Where were the routes up on the ice sheet?
We didn't we didn't really have a set destination. We just wanted to go as far as we could. We weren't going to go all the way to the center of the ice sheet because that was going to take 2 weeks. And that was the entire length of our expedition.
And where was Gino going?
Gino was going to the center of the ice sheet, which he figured would be the strongest winds, the coldest temperatures, the most difficult for flying, which planes at that time would need to know to be able to see if they could fly. So they wanted to find the most extreme part of the ice sheet to find the most extreme weather.
So they figured they'd go in halfway.
Yeah.
Whatever they see on the way in and there, that's what a plane's going to see.
Well, they're going to. So what they did was they, over the first few months of the expedition, they set up food and fuel, fuel as in primer stove fuel, along the route, and then over the course of 3 teams going and setting up these depots, they then established the weather station right in the center of the ice sheet. And then that's where they set up all the weather instruments to test wind speed, temperatures, and things like that.
Is that stuff still there?
That's a good question. I imagine some of it is. I don't know who would have cleaned it away. I mean, you'll see in the film, but from the first winter, it was almost all gone.
Just gets leveled.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they had no idea what the weather was going to be like. No one had ever spent a winter on the ice sheet before. So when they were going out there, it was completely new territory. So they built the weather station and put a Union Jack up there. And when they eventually came back to find August Courtauld, who'd volunteered to do the winter shift. So they did the year shift in 3-month stints. And it was supposed to be 2 people for each time. But the weather was just getting so horrendous on the final journey before winter that it was supposed to take them 2 weeks to get there, but it took them 6. So they had been eating all of the food that was supposed to be left for the person on the ice sheet.
Sure.
So when they got there, August said, this is not going to work. 2 people can't stay here. I need to stay here alone. So he decided to stay there alone with no idea of what the weather was going to be like. And the weather station was completely buried. By the end, he was completely under the snow, living in the ice sheet.
So what was your experience like on this ice sheet? You were in the summer, right? So
We were in
lots
the
of
summer.
water flow, lots
Yeah.
of melt, and all that kind of stuff. But how did you feel it was like up there?
I mean, for us, it was very easy in the summer. I mean, you can see here all the crevasses are completely clear because there's no snow. So in the summer, it's easy to navigate. I mean, I say easy. You can walk for half an hour, and then suddenly there's a crevasse that's 5 meters wide, and you have to turn around half an hour and go back the other way. So doing that in the summer is easy enough, but doing it in the winter when there's a few inches of powder over these crevasses.
Are you just poking through and?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a few photos of that later of the original expedition, and yeah, they would essentially. Well, I mean, only when they were in situations where they knew there was a crevasse, they would be poking, but genuinely it would be until the dogs fell in. That's when they knew there was a crevasse.
Do they pull the dogs back out?
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
So the first dog's just like,
The first dogs just fall in, yeah. They're called snow bridges. So the snow falls
Yeah.
and creates a bridge over the crevasse. And then you'll see in the photos, it just looks, in the winter, it's just a perfect white landscape. But there's all these crevasses which go for miles. So that's the weather station eventually when August was found.
So did you get the feeling when you're up there that this would have been a pretty rough ordeal to go through?
Absolutely.
If you didn't have modern conveniences and gear and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, it's just so easy to just lose perspective there because you just see in every direction just ice. And then, the sky is gray. And then when they were traveling, in bad weather, like I can't imagine just what it would have been like. Just a complete white landscape in every direction, white skies.
Just looking at the compass and going?
Exactly, yeah.
Huh.
And the compasses would freeze because it would get so cold. So sometimes they would just have to guess where they were going.
That's crazy.
So they had planted flags every quarter mile, but they hadn't anticipated how much snow was going to fall. So by the time it got to winter, the flags were completely buried.
Huh. So when you guys were up there, different century, right? If you got into trouble, like if someone broke a leg or whatever, how would you get out?
We had emergency GPSs, so we press
Yeah.
a button and a helicopter flies in and gets us.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
pretty low risk, right?
Very low risk. I mean,
But how long would it take? So without the helicopter, how long would it take you to get out the traditional way?
I mean, you might not be getting out. I mean, some of these crevasses go all the way to the base of the ice sheet. So if you fall down one of those, you're not coming out.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's still the case.
That's still the case, yeah. Yeah, I mean, knowing that a helicopter could come get you was pretty reassuring, but there were still a few moments where things were a little sketchy.
What was the sketchiest thing that you guys did up there?
My sister crossing that crevasse a few photos back was one of the moments we had to cross. I mean, we were pretty certain that middle piece looked safe, but we would have had to walk a long way in either direction. So
Is she roped right there?
No, she's
What?
not. Yeah.
We decided to get a rope.
We thought we'd be all right without ropes.
So that was the sketchiest thing, right?
that was one of the sketchiest.
I can't
parts,
tell how
yeah.
deep it is. On the left, I can't tell how deep the one on the right is.
How deep that one below is, well, I mean, it gets narrower and narrower, so your body would be crushed after 50 feet, but then the crack keeps going down to black, as far as you can see.
That's no good. So no ropes?
No ropes, yeah. We decided not to use ropes. I mean, we used them at the start. They were just getting a bit annoying with filming and things, so we decided to ditch them.
Yeah. Well, luckily nobody wound up in a crevasse. That's
Yeah. We also wanted some adventure. We didn't want to make it too easy for ourselves.
Yeah. A little bit of risk.
Yeah, exactly.
So how long did you guys spend up there?
We spent 2 days on the ice sheet.
You actually camped up there, right?
Yeah. So the weather, the weather in the summer is not that extreme. I mean, you can still see there my sister's wearing a beanie and gloves and a jacket. But when the sun would come out, and if you're working, you could be in a t-shirt and you'd be fine.
And where are you guys here?
So this is slightly ahead. So that's Benty holding the phone. So that's whose grandfather was guiding Gino, and then that's his son showing him the ice on the way to the second base camp, which was our plan for straight after the ice sheet.
And this is satellite imagery or what?
Satellite imagery, exactly. His dad didn't use this kind of stuff. He just liked going by the seat of his pants. So whereas his son knew that where we were trying to go and came to meet us and was like, you can't do this, look at what the ice is. So unfortunately, Greenland had been having the worst ice sheet year in 30 years. So his son came aboard and said, you can't get up there. The ice is too heavy. It's at 90% ice, and any travel past 70% he used the word suicidal.
And what is it? What is this ice you're describing? This is the sea ice.
Sea
that's
ice,
breaking
exactly.
off?
Yeah.
So 70% means that like 70% of the surface of the water
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
icebergs
And
or
it was
whatever.
it was over 90% when we were trying to get there. It had been a cold winter, and it all depends on the winds and how they move the sea
and the
ice.
ship you're on, would it be considered an icebreaker?
No,
or no.
no, it
so
was
you're
not.
just dodging.
Yeah, we're,
Okay.
well, we're dodging and
Moving
doing
slow, yeah,
gentle impacts. You sort of you go up to an iceberg, an ice flow that's in the way, and then you just hit the throttle and just nudge it out the way to give yourself a route through. So his dad was luckily not swayed by his son's advice and thought, okay, well, let's give it a go. So we spent about 5 hours traveling north, and the sea ice just got more and more busy. And then, unfortunately, we did reach a point where it was almost solid ice around us, and we tried multiple routes, but at one point we were trapped for a few hours, and Benty was getting very concerned. I mean, again, nowadays, he seemed more concerned than I was. I had the GPS button, and but so he said, because eventually, if a big enough ice flow comes along, they will just crash the boat, and then you just have to jump onto the ice flow and wait to be rescued.
You get Shackleton.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when this right here,
Yeah.
is this 100%? Is this 90%? What
That's
are we looking at?
90-something percent.
That's 97%.
Yeah.
And
So
you can jump on that, or you can't.
you
Or
can jump on
it and
certain
maybe you're in the
parts of
water.
that. You can jump on bits of it.
So it's just a giant mess.
It's a giant mess, yeah. So we ended up getting trapped in this area for a few hours, and then he decided we needed to turn around, which was devastating because so they spent the first 2 years at that first base camp that we saw, and then after Gino's return to England, Pan Am paid him to go back to look for what would eventually become an airport, and so he decided that it would be better to go to an area further north that he had spotted from the plane on the first expedition. So we were trying to reach his second base, and this first part failed. So we had to go back and get more fuel after a few days at sea. And then we were just in this random town, and everyone seems to be related in Greenland. It's a pretty impressive network of people. So we found this tiny town where we could get fuel, and met one of Benty's cousins, and he was like, oh, I'm going to go ask some people about Gino. I think someone in the village might know something about him. And then he introduced us to this man called Gideon, who said that his grandfather was haunted by the ghost of Gino.
Really?
So, yeah. So his grandfather knew Gino in 1930, and after Gino's death, apparently Gino had come back and visit this man. But haunted in a sort of English-American sense is negative, but he was saying it in a more positive way.
Right. I mean, it's still amazing to me that, Gino's there, and then several generations later, his nephew shows up, and it's like, who's going to show him around but Benty, this guy, the same
Exactly.
family, right?
It's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible.
And the fact that we just happened to stop in this town because it was the nearest place to get gas after our failed trip further north, and this guy just came along, and he was out fishing at the time, so we just wandered around the town for a few hours, and then he came back after his day's fishing, and then just sat down, and he didn't speak any English at all, so Benty was translating as much as he could. And telling these stories about Gino and his way of life. I mean, he essentially lives the same way that his grandfather did. He still had his grandfather's boots in the house, and they're still just fishing and hunting seal the same way that their family always did.
How do they fish and hunt seal these days?
So with guns, they shoot the seals.
Oh, yeah?
So it used to obviously...
Like a shotgun or
no,
like,
a rifle.
Really?
And quite small calibers, surprisingly. Most of them just had 2.2s. Yeah, so they're obviously good shots because there's quite a lot of blubber. I was surprised that that's all they used.
Yeah, I would imagine they'd get something big too.
Well, they have bigger rifles that they use for bears. They typically use 308s for the bears. They carry them
seal
around.
hunting is a pretty brutal thing. Like the seals just kind of come up to the boat, right? Or
no, they're very, very wary. I'm
are?
amazed.
Now they're
Yeah, now they are. I mean, it's crazy to think that they managed to do so well getting them, because we never got closer than 60 feet to seals. They pop up and they see the boat and they're instantly gone.
So how are they getting seals with the 22? Are they hitting them from a distance? Or?
No, they just idle their boats and sit around and just wait for one to pop up, not knowing that they're there, and have a quick shot of it.
That's it, huh?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's
they're just
amazing.
Sitting there, pop, there's one.
Yeah.
And they wait for it again. Got
exactly,
it.
yeah.
And they're just really good shots with the 22.
They're really good shots, yeah. But then, in the summer, this is quite easy because there's water everywhere and the seals can pop up anywhere. But in the winter, it becomes a lot more difficult. So they just kind of stand. So the seals keep breathing holes alive in the ice sheet. So they'll find weaker parts of the sea ice, and then they'll poke their heads through repeatedly to keep a breathing hole. So they sort of slowly walk up to them and then wait for one to pop up and just shoot it as it pops up.
And then,
and then
it floats
hook,
up, or what?
They
gotta catch it real quick.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned bears. There are polar bears up here, right?
There are polar bears, yeah. When we were walking around the town, we had to walk around with rifles because they sometimes come into the town. But then...
and is that a meal, or are they just trying to scare the polar bear off?
It's a meal. And it's the best meal. So we were talking to Benty, and the natives are only allowed to shoot a very small number of polar bear a year.
Unless it comes into the town?
Unless it comes into the town, yeah. If it's sort of a South Park thing, like, oh, it's heading right for us. But they don't seem to care about the laws, from my understanding. He said, oh, if we see a bear, we'll shoot it. I take the meat off, and then we put some rocks in the carcass, and we sink it to the ocean, and then go into town, and you have no evidence other than the meat, which you say, oh, it's a seal.
Just drag the bear into town. I shot it back here.
Well, yeah, that's what he said. He said we need to get the meat off it as quickly as possible and sink the body before anyone comes.
Is there like what's the police government situation like in these small towns up there?
Non-existent from what I saw. I mean, Nuuk on the other side of the coast is a proper city with a police station. There's no police. There's no government on the east coast of Greenland. They're pretty much fending for themselves there.
It's just really harsh.
It's really harsh. Yeah, it's a tough way of life, and even in the summer, it's tough. I can't imagine what it's like in the winter in 24-hour-a-day darkness.
So you guys took off angling for the second base camp, where he was trying to establish an airport or find an airport on that base.
Exactly.
You couldn't get there because of the sea ice.
Yeah, couldn't get there, so we went back in town, got some more gas, met Gideon, and then we made a second attempt, and unfortunately the same thing happened. Hit too much sea ice, and then Benty got even more worried because the boat got damaged at one point. And then we went back into town, and we were told by some other locals that if we try again, we might die. I was fairly surprised. It did. I mean,
you should probably listen to these guys, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They live there. They survived. They're still there. Like, don't do that. You're going to die. Like.
But I mean, we weren't that far from the coast. I like the idea of, worst case scenario, just skipping along the thing. Because these ice floes are very large and they're often next to each other.
The British exceptionalism continues to this day.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I mean,
you got your magic button, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was just very desperate to get there. I mean, it's where the second base is where Gino died as well. So I was very keen to get there. And then that was our second attempt. It looked almost like the first.
And this is aerial?
So this is the Watkins Range. So while Gino was up at the second base, he was flying to test the height of the coastal mountains, because obviously planes of that time needed to know how high the mountains went to make sure they could get over them. And
so flying to test the height, you mean he buzzes right off the top and looks at the
flying next to
altimeter?
them, exactly. Check the elevation you're at, and you fly the same height and make a note of it. And while he was doing that, he discovered this mountain range, which is now called the Watkins Mountain Range. It's the highest mountains in the Arctic.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And how was he I saw that one shot where he had floats.
Yes.
Right. But you had problems getting in and out because of that. I guess you said it was a bad year for sea ice.
Yeah.
But when he was doing the expedition, it would have been more like this, some clear areas to land on the water, or what?
So in the summer, he was flying on floats, but again, it was an extremely dangerous way to do it, because the ice is constantly moving. So you have a clean area to take off, and that area might have
Not
been
there
closed
anymore.
in on by the time you get back. So they broke both planes. They took 2 planes out there, and both by the end of the expedition were broken from hitting ice. But in the winter, it's actually a lot easier because when the sea is just a complete blanket surface, they had skis on the planes. So
Okay.
in the winter, it was very easy for
But
them.
up on the shelf or the ice sheet, you
Yeah.
can't land on that?
You can, yeah, on skis. So they would get over the mountains and then land on the flat plateau the other
Try
side.
to find somewhere that doesn't have crevasses or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So how come you guys didn't take airplanes on this expedition?
Well, a plane to the Watkins Range was £28,000,
Oh, wow.
which was almost more than the entire budget of the documentary.
What kind of plane was that?
It was a small Cessna, but it had to come from Sweden. That was the nearest person that was willing to do it. So
Yeah, always trying to find someone that...
yeah, it was devastating. I hope to try again and get a plane to go back. I'd actually love to do. There's been very little skiing there. I'd love to do some first ski descents down the Watkins Range. Yeah. Although we did actually nearly get a flight there completely by accident on our penultimate day in Greenland.
Which means, by the way, penultimate, I'm not...
Oh, sorry, second to last.
Second to last.
We were walking around in town, and my sister, who's with me, who's very social and constantly talking to people, started talking to the only other non-Greenlanders who were walking around the town, and there was just this teenage boy. I forget his name. Someone might know his name. It turned out that he's broken a load of world records. He was an 18-year-old. He's flown around the world multiple times,
And he's down.
and he was there. And he was there because he was doing a route he was actually following a large part of Gino's route. He was doing the first solo flight of an under 20-year-old somewhere. And he had engine trouble and landed in a Massilic unintentionally to check an oil leak. And so I got chatting to him, and I was like, look, I'm trying to get to this place. And he was like, well, that's actually very close to where I'm going, but I need to make sure my plane's working. And he was like, look, if you can find yourself, I've forgotten the name of the submersible suits, the cold water suits, if you
Like
fall
the
into
Mustang.
water.
Yeah, the survival suits.
He was like, if you can get hold of one of those, you can come with me, and we'll fly up there if the plane's working. So I spent the whole day going around town talking to people who didn't speak English, trying to find one of these suits, and did manage to find one. But he went back to his plane that morning, and the engine was still leaking oil. It was devastating.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, so I thought, we'd multiple thoughts of, we might get there, but yeah, failed. But
And in this case, why couldn't you extend your trip a couple days to make that happen? Because that seems like a pretty good deal.
Well,
Like
when he discovered that the engine was still leaking oil after the maintenance that he did, that was the extent of the maintenance that he could do himself. So the plane was being shipped back to England to be properly worked on. And beyond him, the ice itself wasn't going to be moving in a short period of time. They said we'd have to stay for multiple more weeks. And even then, the ice might not move enough for us to be able to get up there. But it's just a good excuse for me to go back.
Got to go back.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to find a pilot that's willing to fly up and down.
Exactly, yeah. And I have found a pilot. I found a guy who flew not one of Gino's actual planes, but the same model, a Gypsy Moth. He flew around the tip of Africa and back. And I've spoken to him, and he's really keen to go and recreate Gino's routes on the plane.
I think you can do it. I think you can find someone. You got a name for yourself, right? You say, you want to do this? Let's go. I'll pay for gas.
Yeah.
That's not $28,000.
Exactly.
It's a lot, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of pilots out
I
there
would
that'd
love
be
to.
interested.
And I've flown in one of these planes. It's unbelievable. I found a guy in England who had one of them, and he took me out. They're made out of canvas, so they're wood and canvas. So I was kind of shocked. We met at the hangar, and he just lifted the plane up with one hand and walked it out. And it weighs nothing. It's just canvas and wood. He said when I was stepping into it, he was like, okay, you can only put your foot there. If you step anywhere else, your foot's going to go through. So these planes are essentially made out of nothing.
Wouldn't you feel awful if you like put your foot through some guy's
I
canvas
know,
plane?
yeah, and a 100-year-old plane. But these planes are just so perfect. I was filming off the side, and he just spoke to me on the radio, and he was like, "I'm going to cut the engine so you get less drag when you're filming out the side." And he cut the engine off, and we were just cruising for 15 minutes. It didn't feel like we were losing any altitude at all. The planes are just so perfectly designed that they just sail.
They just cruise.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling, huh?
Incredible, yeah.
So you got a bunch of pictures of ice caves.
Yes,
It looks
so,
like you guys tooled around some ice caves.
Again, yeah, I mean, we were supposed to, the time that we were supposed to have spent to the second base camp, we then had some time to kill. So we wanted to go look at actually what the Greenland ice sheet looked like from underneath to see what August Courtauld essentially was buried within. And so we descended down through a crevasse down into the ice sheet, and it's just incredible seeing it from the inside. You know, it's the oldest ice on the ice sheet is over 1 million years old. So just being amongst this ice that has just packed out, so it's snowfall that just compresses and eventually turns to ice over years. So you just see all the color changes, all the sediment in it. It's just a spectacular view.
What was the sketchiest thing you did in one of these ice caves? Or what, did you experience any like really creepy like?
I mean, they're cracking constantly.
Yeah.
And you know, our guide seemed pretty confident, but he seemed confident about everything. Other than the bits of being stuck in the sea ice, he was always very relaxed. You know, he would walk around with his rifle in its case. Which I was slightly hesitant about. I also asked him when the last time he shot the rifle was, and he said a couple of years or something.
This is the big one.
This is the big one, yeah, that he only uses for polar bears. And I was like, how good of a shot are you? Has this rifle been sighted in any point seen? But he was extremely relaxed. He'd actually never been onto the ice sheet. As he said in the interview in the trailer, the Inuit don't go onto the ice sheet. There's no reason for them to. And there's no hunting up there, the weather's horrendous, and they also used to believe, and it seems like some of these stories they do still believe, but they believe that there's sort of spirits and demons in the wind on the ice sheet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like a desert, right? It's
exactly.
Like the middle of the desert.
Well, it is a desert, yeah. So they had a lot of stories about what being on the ice sheet is like, and when he came onto the ice sheet with us, it was the first time he'd ever done it.
Really?
Yeah.
So all the sleds and the dogs and stuff, that's just from going to town along the coast?
That's from going along, the dogs are purely for the coast for hunting. And all the hunting is from the water.
Yeah. And this is one of the kayaks that you guys took? This looks like...
Yes. So we obviously wanted to do kayaking. We wanted to... see the sport that Gino essentially brought to Europe, and again we were told not to go kayaking. Neither me or my sister had done really any kayaking at all, and these icebergs just randomly flip over at times, and they're obviously much larger underneath, and they can just kick you over. And we didn't have dry suits or anything like that. But it was...
Have you done a lot of kayaking, did you say, or none?
No. I'd done bits of kayaking on, beach holidays.
Yeah.
After a cocktail.
But not like a ski kayak,
not like this. But it was incredible.
Did you go in the water?
No, absolutely not. I went up to my waist at one point.
Yeah.
But your body just goes numb instantly. And... that is unfortunately how Gino died. He died kayaking on the second expedition. He would always go hunting alone, which was one thing. He essentially, everything he did in Greenland was based on the Inuits' advice. He spent a lot of time with them. He actually was in a semi-long-term relationship with one of the Inuit girls. And he listened to everything they did and became... a big part of their lives out there. But even though they said always hunt in a group, he discovered that the group scared away the seals more, so he preferred to do it on his own. And on the second expedition in Lake Fjord, he had spotted this place that was what he thought would be perfect for an airport. So there was the fjord went into a Y, and one arm of the Y went into a smooth field, which would be a perfect landing strip for a regular plane, and then the other fjord was a long strip of water for landing on water. So that was his idea for the airport, and the other arm of the Y ends in a several 100-foot ice wall coming from the ice sheet. And because there's a lot of sediment and things coming from there, that's where a lot of fish hang out. Therefore, that's where the seals go to eat fish. So kayaking underneath this wall is where you were most likely to find seal. And a large piece broke off while he was kayaking underneath it, and it washed him away, and his body was never found. Only the kayak was found. At 25. So this was that was his fourth major expedition that he was the leader of by 25.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Yeah. All right, well, we'd like to take some questions from the audience. I think this is a good time.
Wonderful.
Did we get through? I think we got through most of the good.
Yeah, that's the final image. It was a nice bit of symbolism for me. I used this. I thought the passage would be a nice image to fly the drone through while it was talking about Gino's death. So I flew the drone through there, and that was one of the most scenic parts of the trip for me.
That's pretty cool. All right. We'd like to take some questions from the audience. So we're going to get someone to run a mic around for you real quick. So just wait till you get the mic, speak up into the mic, and then any questions? Here.
Yes, while you were there, did you feel that you sort of had as I would put it, a sort of kinship with your relative and were sort of, in a way, guided by that genetic memory at any point?
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I had several family members tell me that when I got there that I would be told I had relations there. There are a few stories that say Gino had children out there. They're not in any of the official accounts, but we don't know how much these stories changed over years. But both my aunt and uncle said you're going to find people that look like you out there.
And did you?
I did not, unfortunately. But there was one child from Freddie Spencer Chapman who was one of Gino's third in command, who did go on to live. And Freddie said he was going to send him to Sedberg, which was his boarding school in England, but unfortunately that didn't happen.
Question about how Gino died. If he was kayaking alone, then the cause of his death is a bit theoretical.
It is completely theoretical. Okay. Lots of people have different opinions. So the reason why they think that a piece fell from the ice wall is because that had happened to him 4 days before, and he sprained his wrist. He was kayaking underneath there, and a large piece fell, knocked him off his kayak, hurt his wrist, and he came back and was bandaged up and told them all about what had happened. And then on the day he went missing, they heard a large crack from the ice sheet, so they heard the sound of it. But there's some members of my family who thinks that he just disappeared and wandered off there on his own to do who knows what. His mother had jumped off of the White Cliffs of Dover, and some members of the family thought that he just wanted to wander off and be on his own in Greenland. And then other people think he might have been eaten by a polar bear, which was a possibility of why he wasn't in the kayak. But the main theory is that the sound they heard was a piece of ice breaking off, and why he was not with his kayak.
Do you recall the name of the pilot that you met up there?
I follow him on Instagram. There aren't that many teenagers who have broken world records of flying the world, so it would be easy to find, but I don't recall his name, I'm afraid.
hate to keep going back to the flight thing, but it's so interesting. Have you considered like an ultralight or a smaller aircraft that you can just bring with you? I know you can buy those for a reasonable amount, and then it's just about fuel. And I don't know how far the Watkins range is, but maybe there's some sort of portable airplane that might work better.
Possibly, no. Unfortunately, just this expedition used up all of the funding that we'd managed to gather over the previous years. But so anything beyond that was a pipe dream. But I do I do want to look into it. It's only a 2-hour flight from Massalik, so it's not actually that far. But it's just finding a pilot who wants to do it. And then, also I want to, I'd like to do some skiing from it. And then also it's difficult because you need to, you can only go in very specific times because all through, from spring through the summer, it's snow throughout the year, but the snow is too slushy to land. So the skis get caught and you crash. So you can only land in the winter, and then the winter has terrible winds and snow. So you're very limited on when you're even able to fly there. But it's something I'm desperate to try and do.
I think you need to get into paragliding.
Yes, possibly.
Take the skis off, do a little descent.
Gino's nephew,
who's
in the documentary, is semi-paralyzed from a paragliding accident.
Oh.
So he might have some ideas.
He's still into it, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I'll take you. Way in the back there.
Maybe it's just me, but whenever I see beautiful places like this, my first thought is, what would it be like to disappear? Go leave modernity, you figure it must be beautiful and everyone knows each other and it's so nice. And yet logically, you also realize that it's probably an incredibly difficult, harsh life in a lot of cases. So I'm curious, given that you have a relative who sort of did choose to live that life in some sense, and you got to spend a lot of time out there, was your impression that indeed living sort of out in the sticks, that these people were happier on average than normal people, or was it harder, just different?
So it's a huge contrast of both sides. I mean, a large part of me thought, wow, what an incredible life this would be. I mean, I'm a fairly solitary individual. I like skiing in remote parts of the mountains on my own, spending as long away from people in the mountains as I can. So I loved the idea of being out there. But unfortunately, that's not the way that a lot of the youth there seem to go. Alcoholism and drug use are a huge problem there. So it seems like the people who don't, so there's a large part of the population who embrace the lifestyle and love it and seem extremely happy. Benty and his son both seem to be living the dream. Their life was just fishing and finding seals and going around on a boat and living a simple, blissfully happy life. But then we'd go to some of the towns and there are people just completely hammered. And Benty would just tell us, it's like, oh yeah, they have TV here and they see people living lives in cities and they're so depressed that they can't be doing that they drink all day. So I guess it purely comes down to your personality. So some people see it as a trap that they can't get out of, and it is very difficult for them to get out of. So they obviously have Greenlandic citizenship, which also comes with Danish citizenship, but the Danes do not treat them well. My best friend lives in Denmark, and he said the Danish people heavily look down on the Inuits. They don't get good job opportunities. They're treated very badly. So the ones who do try and make it out do not generally have very successful lives. So the ones who don't like the lifestyle out there, it's a trap for them. But the ones who embrace it seem to be living a life that I would dream of.
Hi. When I was in college, I got the opportunity to actually learn a little bit of Netsilik. In the time you spent up there, did you learn or pick up any Inuit dialects, words, or phrases?
I did not. So sorry, what dialect did you learn?
Netsilik.
Okay, so on the East Coast, it's different. It's Kalalit. So they have multiple dialects. Something that I realized when I came back and I had all these hours of interviews with locals, and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I roughly heard from Benty what they were saying, and I was like, these are going to be great interviews. And then finding someone to translate them was almost impossible. It took 3 months before I could get the interviews translated, because what they were speaking on the east coast of Greenland was completely different from what they speak on the west coast, which is where most of the people were able to translate from. I did learn a couple of words, but no, it was far too complicated for me.
The usual way Greenlandic dogs are hitched up is in a fan, and yours were sort of in a line 2 by 2. Could you
Yes.
comment, was there something very unusual about either the terrain or the dog team that you chose that?
So they chose that based on what the Greenlanders there told them to do. None of them had ever used dog teams before. So they based all of their sledding and dog teams on what the people there had recommended them to do. And that's what they said to do. I don't know if maybe it's because of the crevasses, but I don't actually know why they chose 2-file instead of a fan.
Hi, question. When you were there, did you learn anything about how for if you whatever city you were at or location, did you learn about how their system of government worked? Did they have a utility system? Did they have a police force? Did they have anything like that, or was it a communally accepted, peaceful environment?
There was certainly no police station. We stopped to the only 2 major towns on the east coast. There was no police station. There was one, in both towns, there was one small shop which acted as the bank, the post office, and the store. And that was the only sort of institution that I saw in any way. There was no evidence of any sort of government or police in either of these towns.
As a follow-up, did it seem like in these towns there was someone that was in charge? Like there was a
not that I
head
could
honcho, so to
not
speak?
that I could tell. No,
everybody just was on their own.
Yeah, it seemed like that. I mean, there was at both towns, it was literally just that building that was all of the necessities, and then there was a school. Other than that, it was only houses.
Well, some guy owns the biggest boat, right?
There's
Where
no-
everybody can get out. Yeah.
There's no big boats. It was crazy. Everyone used very small boats. They're easier to navigate between the ice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have flown a tiger moth across the North Sea from the Flying Club at RAF Travel to Larbrook, taking some position lines. Now, this was at the beginning of air navigation in the 1930s. Do you know what methods of navigation Gino actually used? I mean, some position lines, compasses are not reliable when you get up to the latitude of Greenland. So actually flying that distance, a lot of it over open water, you're very limited. You had a GPS button. You just pressed that and some guy came to pick you up.
Yeah.
But Gino had nothing like that. Once you take off and head out, you have to navigate. Do you know what method he used?
I don't really know. I know that for a lot of the flights over the ice sheet, they would use what they referred to as the sea captain's method, where you go to a certain lateral point, then you work your way along the lateral point, because that was easier to navigate.
Yeah.
So I know that's what they did over the ice sheet, and then along the coast, they were going up and down the coast along the mountains. So just visually, they would use the mountains.
What was the range of one of the?
300 miles.
Yeah.
A gypsy moth would go.
Yeah.
So 150 out and 150 back.
Yeah, exactly.
So pilotage, right?
Pilotage, yes.
Yeah, if you get lost in 150 miles and
what's pilotage? Sorry.
Pilotage is just looking at the ground and saying, "There's that mountain."
Okay.
You know, so 150 miles in the air is not too far.
Yeah.
Well,
you know, you should keep that. But
the big problem you have in a light aeroplane, particularly when you don't know exactly what the winds are, is in working out what your drift is, which is why Francis Chichester, when he flew all the way to Australia, used some position lines, and he also flew a gypsy moth all that distance.
Okay, wow.
Cruise speed with the gypsy moth
About
30 miles an hour.
No, it's about 80 miles an hour.
The gypsy moth?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got the
knots, it's about 65 knots.
Okay, well, the wrong information was in one of the books then.
Okay. Yeah, it's the gypsy moth, well, the tiger moth was a later development.
Yeah.
But it's very, very similar to fly. It's a biplane, it handles very, very well, but the range you've got is very limited. That fuel tank does not, between the wings, does not contain an awful lot of fuel.
Is 300 miles right? That's what I knew it to be.
Well,
it might have been right for Gino.
Yeah,
right. Gino's plane was one of the first.
You can't get your navigation wrong, because if you get your navigation wrong and the wind is wrong and you work your drift out wrong, you miss your target. He was landing on an island in the middle of the Pacific, but he actually got there.
Yeah.
All right. Any more questions? One more question. Chuck?
Actually, I had two questions. So the end result of all this stuff is they were able to land on that ice sheet? I mean...
Yes, they were. So actually, only a few months after Gino's death on the second expedition, they continued staying there to set up the airport, and Charles Lindbergh came out and flew the route that Gino had planned out while they were there. Good. So Charles Lindbergh flew over, landed next to them, and then continued on his journey.
The second question, the taste of seal or bear, and they have different ways of preparing it, so it's not the same all the time?
Yes, bear meat is the best. Like that's what they would ideally eat every time. They would just grill that sort of like steak. Seal they would do in an unlimited amount of ways, and they used every part of the seal. They would use the intestines in stews. They would eat the blubber raw actually in a lot of instances, and then they would eat the eyeballs. They ate every part of the seal and cook in different methods.
Yeah, one more.
So you've had time to sort of process this experience walking in the footsteps of Gino, and after actually processing, having gone through the same landscapes and to some extent the same cultures that he experienced, I'm curious if you're left with any sort of nagging questions that you feel some great desire to answer but haven't quite gotten around to yet.
Not necessarily questions, but I want to go... Where we were going, a lot of people have been to, and I want to go back there and get more of a sense of the feeling of new experiences which he was having on a daily basis. That's one of the reasons I want to incorporate the only other skill I have, which is skiing, and I'd love to be able to do some first ascents down the Watkins Range and actually have some experiences out there that I know that no one has ever done and places that no one has ever been and skied. So I'd really like to do that, and I'd ideally like to do it with Inuit people, because there was a lot of people there who saw Gino in an extremely positive light. He apparently treated them all very well, and that somehow has passed down to these generations. And I'd like to spend more time with those families and see what effect that might have had on their lives. Other than haunting.
Yeah. Well, haunting's a good thing, right?
It was haunting was the translation, but he said in a friendly way.
Yeah.
So
well, Nick, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate
Thank you for having
you out. Thank you for joining us online and in person as well. If you're in the Los Angeles area, if you're watching online right now and you're in the Los Angeles area, come by sometime for one of these talks. We're here every Thursday. Otherwise, I'll do it for us tonight at the Adventurers Club.
And come to the screening on Saturday.
Yes, come to the screening on Saturday. It's going to be a good time. Hopefully, we'll have the air conditioning fixed by then.
I mean, I'm used to cold climates. So,
so this is nice.
This is tough for me. Even after 7 years living here, I'm not used to the heat.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week at the Adventurers Club.